Okay. Somehow I have this metaphor of how this talk is going to go. Maybe it'll resonate with you, maybe it won't. But I've been spending a fair amount of time the last couple of 3 weeks yes, it's about the middle of December, taking whatever I can on a weekend to hike Mount Pisgah. And I've been going on trails that I'm not super familiar with. Like you can get there and you can go straight up to the top on Trail 1. So I think it was New Year's Eve, and I decided, I think, oh, where does Trail 17 go? So I took a right as I got up onto the main trail, and I kind of got lost. I didn't know where I was. It was just kind of interesting to just kind of be really present and try to find my way through and take different turns and think, okay, lower numbers might be better, so let's stay on 3 for a while. No, 3 is just getting me further. I have no idea where I am. Maybe, oh, 6 goes to the summit, but it's 2 miles and it's 4:30 in the afternoon. Okay, well, if I'm going to get out of here, I better just do it. So it was this kind of how I feel this talk is. Maybe you'll resonate. Just giving you fair warning. Just giving you fair warning. We may end up at a top, I don't know where. So, I also want to say that instead of kind of taking questions at the end, I'm going to kind of prompt for, maybe discussion as we go along. Just see how that works. It was just an idea that I thought might work better for me. So to begin, I'm going to share a passage from The Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 lines. And it reads like this. No wisdom can we get hold of, no highest perfection, no bodhisattva, no thought of enlightenment either. When told of this, if not bewildered and in no way anxious, a bodhisattva courses in the well-gone's wisdom. In form, in feeling, will, perception, and awareness, nowhere in them they find a place to rest on. So I'm going to read that again. No wisdom can we get hold of, no highest perfection, no bodhisattva, no thought of enlightenment either. When told of this, if not bewildered and in no way anxious, a bodhisattva courses in the well-gone's wisdom. In form, in feeling, will, perception, and awareness, nowhere in them they find a place to rest on. So this is a passage I come back to again and again. That's kind of like my life koan, if you will. And so for me, the words, if not bewildered and in no way anxious, were the first to catch in my throat. No wisdom, no highest perfection, no bodhisattva, no thought of enlightenment. Well, then what's the point? So I'm kind of curious how maybe some of you out there might respond to that, if you like to share. Anyone? And maybe you don't know, and that's okay too.
Can you repeat the question?
I'm just curious how you respond to the passage, and I can read it again if you like.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. The more you hear it, the more it'll sink in. So, no wisdom can we get hold of, no highest perfection, no bodhisattva, no thought of enlightenment either. When told of this, if not bewildered and in no way anxious, a bodhisattva courses in the well-gone's wisdom. In form, in feeling, will, perception, and awareness, nowhere in them they find a place to rest on.
It's interesting you said the part about not bewildered or anxious. So I go, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, isn't it?
Interesting way to be.
Yeah. Yes.
When I hear it, I think like, what would have to change to make this not okay for me? So if the word like no brightness were also in there, then I think I would get really anxious. But when I hear the word like wisdom and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, well, that's cognitive stuff. That's what they're trying to tell us. So I don't know how if that's.
Oh, that's interesting. And this is why I want to hear, because I think everybody has a different take on it. You know what?
this is like a very deep letting go into the present.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very deeply Zen.
Yeah.
Because all these other ideas are very much places to sort of get stuck, even though they're completely legitimate. It's all the sort of the contradictions
Mm-hmm.
and finding that place. That's why I say very, very deep letting go of
Yeah.
preconceived notions about how it's going to go. It's a don't know mind
Mm-hmm.
kind of place to stay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep.
If you're not trying to attain something, I thought the last line was really interesting. Find nowhere to rest.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of, I interpreted it as instead of like thinking about it and not being able to rest, it was you just are nowhere and
Mhm.
you can rest.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yes, anyone?
I hear all the movement.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing that that you can't concretize something.
Mhm.
You can't pin it down. You can't hold it in one place.
Mm-hmm.
That that there's nothing to get a hold of because everything is in movement. So
Mhm.
this you know, maybe fundamental conundrum or fundamental enigma of life, you know, a beating heart or, you know, a flowing wave
Mm-hmm.
that you can't capture it.
Mhm.
We're thinking like Sound of Music. You
Mhm.
can't catch a moonbeam,
Mm-hmm.
and you know you can't capture a cloud and pin it
Mm-hmm.
down.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
to allow the movement to continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Someone back there. Yeah.
For me, it reminds me of the line from the Heart Sutra. No attainment,
Mhm.
nothing to attain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I, at one point in my life, struggled very hard with that verse because, in the same way, like, well, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
But if you consider it from the point of view of an eternal now, with a sort of narrativized storytelling of the past and
Mhm.
uncertain present, then nothing can be attained. No, you're in the moment now. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Therefore, no wisdom, none of these things, these sort of discursive things, which are of use, maybe for other things, but not for the attainment, the ironic, of the bodhisattva path. So therefore, the bodhisattva is not bothered by this particularly. It's not baffled as the normal person would be because
Mhm.
we are in the attainment here. We are in that present space. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
So one more. I think Mariah.
My gosh, sometimes I get lost in the intellectual path
Mm-hmm.
when individuals are talking, and I think I must be missing something. I must not have cognitive skill and expertise to follow the path. Anyway, for me, it's sometimes very concrete. I've been on this journey for 14 years, and I do believe that sometimes on the journey, things do become more clear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There can be clarity. I hope.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that, yeah, I'm feeling it recently that indeed I have a more depth of understanding of, more understanding and more clarity. Is that possible?
Mm-hmm. I think everybody's saying aspects of what I'm going to talk about. Movement, you know, is there clarity, you know, letting go, all of these different things are part of what I'm hoping that I address today. But I'm going to take a little side trip, if you don't mind, in a moment. So but before I do that, I want to say that what I'm talking about today is Prajna, the perfection of wisdom, the heart of the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, our tradition of thought and practice. So wisdom, Prajna, the mother of the Buddhas, gives birth to enlightenment, and it is wisdom that nourishes and sustains the practice of compassion. So I am going to talk about compassion towards the end. And I think we've all heard the teaching of, you know, the two wings of enlightenment. Just as a bird needs two wings to fly, a Buddhist practitioner must cultivate both wisdom and compassion. Both are equally important. They must be used together. And wisdom is not just intellectual understanding. I think that's really important. That's part of it, but that's not all of it. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. So it is a deep penetration into the nature of reality, which is going to be different for all of us in some ways, depending on our culture, how our brains are wired, all that stuff. And compassion is not just sympathy, but it's a heartfelt understanding of the suffering that all beings in this world experience. So I'm talking about Prajna and the path of transformation, but in the end, I will also want to address compassion. So I just kind of want to set that stage a little bit. So my side trip, a brief Sanskrit lesson. So Prajna is a type of knowing. It means much more than simply being knowledgeable or having discernment. So to understand what is meant by prajna, we can look at other Sanskrit words that describe other ways of knowing. I just found this really interesting. So the Indo-European root know, G-N-O, is common to a large family of languages, and it conveys the meaning to know, K-N-O-W. So we have the English, K-N-O-W, know. We have the Greek gnosis, G-N-O-S-I-S. And then we have the Sanskrit jnana. I'm obviously not pronouncing Sanskrit, but it's J-N-A-N-A. So interesting to me is that each of these has a consonant, an N, and a vowel. So G-N-O, no, K-N-O, no, and J-N-A, jna. I'm not sure exactly how to say it. So they all come from the same root at some point. So the root J-N-A and jnana can be used to create different words that describe different ways of knowing. So in Sanskrit, the prefix sam, where we get samjna, is a word for perception. So it's a way of knowing that we can look at different objects that have four legs and assume that they are chairs or tables. So we see one and we might, that looks like all of these things have four legs and you're sitting on them, they must be chairs. But chairs can look like a gazillion different ways. Is that a chair? I think so. It only has three legs. It could be. So this is what samjna is. The prefix V gives us vijnanya, the word for consciousness. So the V, the VI, denotes discrimination or discernment, and when combined with jna, the knowing, it focuses on a particular object in a particular moment. And so this is where the senses come into play. Vijnanya points to seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. And each of these supplies discrete moments of knowing that flow into a stream of consciousness. I know I'm smelling incense. The prefix pra carries the sense of bringing something forward, and adding the root jna, the word prajna is born, a wisdom that progresses beyond mere knowing about something and provides insight into the very nature of knowing. How do we know what we know? So this is prajna. It's not just knowledge. It's not. I heard a podcast where they describe prajna as discernment, and I'm like, really? That didn't settle. Yeah, I just thought that's not very satisfying. Discernment, yeah, I can discern between these two kind of books. I don't know. I mean, it was just an interesting word they chose. Maybe they meant something different by it than what I think of it. In any case, prajna is that we're questioning the very nature of how we know what we know. So in Buddhist context, this penetrating way of knowing, we come to understand or come to accept or come to experience the impermanence of everything, movement, change, that all things arise dependent on other things, nothing exists in and of itself by itself independently, and that there is no essential core self that I can point to and say, this is me, no, this is me, no, this is me. I can't point to anything in my body that's me. It's the whole thing working together, but there's not one piece. Essentially, Buddhists would not posit the concept of a soul. So the human tendency to want to hold on to something permanent, you want to capture that cloud, capture that wave, to look for something that independently exists in and of itself, and the belief there is some essential core self is the basis of all suffering. Prajna is the antidote to this, and the means of liberating our minds from suffering. So in my work at the hospital, I often put it more simply. The core of our suffering is the gap between the way things are and the way we want them to be. I want this, I got that. I like this, I like that. I don't like this, but I got that. You know, it's just, it's a constant. I always think, I'm not sure it's exactly the right metaphor, but I always think of the Harry Potter sorting hat. You know, it's like our mind is just this, you know, constant spinning hat going, yep, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, you know. And it, you know, depending on the level of that, you know, I mean, people this time of year often complain about the weather. I'm like, it's January. This is the way it is in January in Western Oregon. Live with it, you know. I mean, I personally like January for a lot of reasons, but you know, so but it's just the way it is, and I'm kind of enjoying the wind and the rain. Hopefully, we won't get the atmospheric rivers that are, you know, deluging California, but you will see. So, another conundrum. Seeing things as they are. Seeing things as they are. How do we know we're seeing things as they are? How do we know? Anybody? How do you know? How do I know? Yeah, that's kind of where I go. Is I don't necessarily ever know.
What did it say?
How can we know things? You know, there's often a teaching in Buddhism, seeing things as they are. Well, how do we know?
And what was his answer?
I don't know. I mean, what do you think? How do you know that you're seeing things as they are?
I would just say you don't know.
Okay, yeah, I think everybody's going, I'm sorry, yeah, that was the discussion Sagan and I had. You don't know.
Well, you can trip over them.
Yes, you can.
The body's in front of you.
Yeah.
You can have to step over them, or you can trip over them. Or
Yeah, I mean, that's a piece of it. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like it also comes along with the idea of how you were talking about how everyone's brains are wired differently, and we've all kind of been formed by this world in different ways. So I guess the way you see things just is dependent on everything that has happened previously that has caused you to see it in that moment.
Sure, sure. I mean, think about if we were sitting here in this room and it were 200 years ago, our view of how things were could be really, really different. For sure, yeah.
I was just going to say that you really have to depend upon what your senses tell you to know whether something is there, or I suppose other people telling you the same thing. So it's a community in response to the point that, you know, you can step over the things in front of you, or you can trip on them. That kind of depends on whether you detected it first. And I tripped over quite a lot of things I didn't see first.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the classic examples in Buddhism is it a coiled rope or is it a snake?
Right.
You know, and so you see this thing, you know, and you're depending on your state of mind at the moment. If you think it's a snake, you might run and scream, and then you're like, wait, it didn't move, it didn't chase me. Oh, it's a rope or it's a garden hose. You know, those kinds of things happen to us all the time. So why did we think it was a snake? And then how do we now know that it's a rope? You know, it's just kind of interesting. Yes.
well, the word faith and trust come to me when I think of in my walk in life and how do we know, and I also agree or can hear what everybody's saying about like we never really do know, but in order to just take the step or eat the peach as Asia sometimes talks about, you know, how we take a step in life, the words faith and trust come to my mind.
I think those are really important, actually. And I kind of was going to sidestep those in general. I thought about that a lot, but faith is really important. I think, you know, how many of you have spent, you know, more than one day or several days in sesshin and sitting all day long and wondering, why am I doing this? You know, what on earth possessed me to sit here all day long and be sleepy and my body hurts like heck? And I don't like having oatmeal every morning, all that stuff, the whole I want and I don't want, you know, but then you think, oh, there's faith that that something can be uncovered through that practice. So I think that's a really important point. You know, there's something that tugs on us. Like when I first started practicing meditation, I don't remember what it was, almost 30 years ago, you know, and after I left my first meditation retreat and I felt like, you know, there was something like a fish, like I'd been caught by a hook and it was tugging on me. And I didn't even know what that was, but that was just the feeling that I had. So yeah, there's some kind of faith and trust there. It's like, oh, there's something here. So, yes, at one level, I don't think we can completely always know. And most of the time we do the best we can. and we're willing to change. I think that's a big thing. We're willing to change our perception. You know, I don't think we can ever come to a resting place. Like Dogen says, no new nests. It's another thing that sticks in my mind is no new nests. We can't ever go, oh, this is how it works. Finally, I got that out of the way. And at the same time, provisionally, we have to sort of accept some things just so we can function day to day. Okay, this is the floor. That's the R2D2 speaker there. You know, we can sort of place all those things, even though we know they're provisional in terms of ultimate reality. But, you know, if we're going to be questioning, we'll be driving ourselves nuts. You know, we can't function in the world compassionately or effectively. So I think we just sort of take some things for granted, like, you know, all of this. So the way things are, you know, what I'm getting at, I guess, is what everybody has alluded to in one way or another is the inherent emptiness of all things. And emptiness is not a bad word. It just means that there's no inherent anything to it. You know, no core unchanging something. You know, I was thinking this morning, it's like, well, the sun always rises. Yes, it does. And it has for a long, long time. But is it the same sun as it was yesterday? I don't know. You know, I don't have any sense of what the sun is like when I'm, you know, with the sun. So I'm thinking, okay, so the sun always rises. Yes, and still don't know what the day is going to bring. Don't know what the sun is like. So, you know, even you can question even those kinds of things. You know, like there's always another day. Yes, there is. But the way, as we've also spoken about, the way we see the world and how ourselves is conditioned by so many things, most of which are unknown to us. We don't really know. You know, none of us chooses when and where we were born. We didn't choose our parents. We didn't choose where we went to school. We didn't choose the era we grew up in. My parents didn't choose their parents, and my grandparents didn't choose their parents, you know, and so on, back to this supposed, for at least according to my DNA, the supposed original mother who is said to have lived in the Middle East about 75,000 years ago. Okay, you know, sure. I wish I could meet her, you know. So the path of Prajna is a path of transformation. Bit by bit, we awaken from our unenlightened, unskillful, unuseful ideas, habits, and practices. I mean, think about how much the world has changed. I don't know, you're what, 40 something? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to be 66 at the end of this month. I know the world has changed a lot. In some ways it stayed the same, but in a lot of ways it's changed a lot. I went to school, elementary school in Birmingham, Alabama in 1968, where no African Americans were allowed, as an example. 1968, Birmingham, Alabama, no African Americans. So, you know, the world has changed a lot, thank goodness. You know, I remember the day that the desegregation thing happened. It was a huge deal for the whole community. Fortunately, it went peacefully, as I remember, because I was only 12 and kind of ignorant, I will say, because I was only 12. But, you know, it was, you know, things have changed. But, you know, other things haven't. So think about how much the world has changed in your lifetime or in yours. You know, who would have thought even 15 years ago we would allow same-sex marriage? You know, I mean, for most people it is fortunately no longer a big deal. You know, I'm thinking about at the hospital. Now we have a whole set of, when people are admitted to the hospital, we have a whole set of questions about gender and gender identity and, you know, sexual orientation and all this kind of stuff. A, which are sometimes needed, but B, which are also optional. People don't have to answer them if they don't want to. 5 years ago, we would never have asked any of that stuff. So things have changed. Things that we thought were the unrealistic, you know, a few years ago are now realistic. So this is one aspect, you know, of the path of transformation. Not everybody goes there, but, you know, many people resist it. But, you know, the world does seem to manage to get there somehow or another. Hopefully we won't be going backward anytime soon. Yeah, we'll see. So as Adjo has taught, it's not necessarily what we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, but how we see it. It's not permanent. It's always changing. It's always unfolding. You think about those, probably all of us as kids, you go to like OMSI or someplace like that, and you put your hand in the box and there's something in there and you don't know what it is, but you're trying to figure out what it is. You know, it's not what is in there, but how do we perceive it when we feel it in the box? So the teaching of emptiness is how reality works, not what it is. The ancestors sought self-transformation above and beyond a search for a picture of how things are. They were constantly about self-transformation and constant questioning. So I don't know, maybe it's helpful to take some, what aspects of life do we take as solid for the sake of functioning in conventional reality? What kind of questions can we ask ourselves to bring us to that place of like, oh, this is not solid and real? I mean, one of them could be the floor. You know, it feels pretty solid. You know, what's going on at an atomic level, I have no idea, but you know, for the sake of my conventional reality, the floor is pretty solid. Can other people think of other examples? Things that we just take for granted? Yeah.
Life.
Life.
Keep living forever.
Yeah, that life will go on forever. Yeah. Yeah, totally, yeah.
If you hurt just like a random part of your body and you don't realize how much you use it until every time it just touches it, you feel pain. It's like, wow, I never knew that right here came into contact with so many things in the world.
That's a great example. It's like, oh, I thought I could get by without this part of my arm right here. This thing that you think is this part, which doesn't seem very significant, but when it's injured, you realize how much it impacts everything else. That's a great example. Yeah.
Similarly, a car.
A car.
While you have it up and running, you know, you take it for granted sometimes, and then you don't notice something going wrong with it, and then it breaks down. And
yeah.
You miss your car.
You miss your car, yeah. And then you miss the money that's going to take to go and fix it, and on, right? Now, all of this is all conventional reality. Anybody else?
I was walking last Sunday morning downtown, early in the morning. Not that early, but 8:30ish.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went down. I thought the First Christian Church might still have their breakfast for the homeless, but they haven't done that since COVID began. But anyway, so I'm walking with my stick slowly, taking in the fact that the homeless are beginning to stir and beginning to move, and also that the city of Eugene has the power washers out to get them moving, to encourage them. But anyway, I took one side step, and it was a misstep, and I hit the concrete. And as a result, I had this gorgeous big bruise right on a really padded part of my body. Mm-hmm. And I got up okay, and everything was okay. Nothing was broken. No surgery necessary. And so I kept walking. And mostly I thought, well, I hope nobody saw that. It wasn't a very graceful move. But at any rate, hitting the ground. Mm-hmm. Hitting the ground. Boom.
Boom.
And then,
woo!
Well, joy, I can get back up again, and I can walk away from that. I didn't break both arms. I don't have to have surgery. No casts. And I'm a dancer, so every once in a while, if you're an athlete, sometimes you hit the ground. Yeah. If you're a dancer, sometimes you hit the ground.
Yeah. Sometimes you hit the ground, and the earth is always there to catch you.
Right. I get to walk away.
Yeah. So one of the things that comes into my mind is whatever pops into your mind is true. Like, can you trust everything your mind tells you about yourself or others? We all laugh. Of course we can't. You know, it's yeah.
Well, I think I tend to hang my hat on the love.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, what is love?
Yeah. What is that? Yeah. It's a good. I mean, but it is. It's sort of like, I don't know. I mean, think about you're just walking downtown, and you're passing people, whoever they are, and you're making judgments about them.
Yeah.
Look at those shoes. Oh my God. Look at that hair. Oh my God. You know, and we're just like, you know, it's just like this constant input of crap. You know, it's like, can you trust that? No, at least I can't. You know, I think it's kind of humorous that it happens, but you know, without even any bidding on my part. You know, and then or you meet somebody and you make all this whole list of assumptions about them, and then you find out you're 180 million degrees wrong, completely wrong. You have no idea who this person is, but you've painted this picture of them in your mind because that's what minds do, right? Who hasn't done that? Oh, okay, I don't know. So there's one thing that I kind of like to do. And some of this is not really Buddhist per se, and we'll see how people respond to it. But I kind of like, I don't know that much about her. So if you don't like this person, I'm just looking at one small little piece, and that's Byron Katie's 4 questions. So I don't know anything about her other than these 4 questions, which I think can be really helpful. So something comes into your head. I don't know, I'm a this or I'm a that. So the first thing is it true? Because our mind tells us this, we want to believe that it's true. So this is one way into that inquiry. Is it true? I'm going to say, yes, it's true. Well, can you absolutely know that it's true? Can you know that beyond a shadow of a doubt? And this might take several, iterations to like, yeah, it's true because I hear my mind says it all the time. Well, really? Okay, so maybe maybe it's true because my parents always said this. Okay, well, maybe they're not right either. So you can really work on that, verifying whether it's true. And then a really important piece is, how do you react when you have this thought? So I'm just going to, use an example that's common, it's kind of self-criticism, self-judgment that comes up for a lot of us. Like, I'm not very good at giving talks in front of the assembly, How would I be if I didn't have that thought? How do I react to that thought? Let me say, how do I react to that? I might react with anxiety or with fear of being up here. And who would I be if I didn't have that thought? I don't know. So these are really interesting questions to ask ourselves, especially about stuff that comes up about ourselves when we're sort of, these thoughts that just arise out of nowhere, probably from karma, probably from conditioning, probably from who knows what. Is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react? What happens if you believe the thought? Who would you be without it? So that's one path of kind of getting to the bottom of things. Another approach is, stopping yourself after the first thought. If you think about, on second thought, that's actually a really good practice on second thought. Our first reaction that we have to something is usually less important than what happens next. So if I have a thought to, I don't know, run up and leave the Zendo because I'm feeling anxious, my second thought is, no, I'm not going to do that. I had the thought, but it doesn't mean I have to do anything about it. So there's lots of things that happen like that. I think addiction could be a really good one for that. Any kind of addiction. I was having a conversation with my partner, Alex. That's why this example comes up, because he's been in recovery for many, many years. It's kind of like you're stressed. You've had a long day. There's a lot of pressure on you. Boy, a sip of alcohol would taste really good, And I do this, sometimes. But I know for me, it's not so much an issue of not being able to stop, because I can without a problem, but it's also, I can't sleep very well. Alcohol has a terrible effect on my sleep. So if I'm gonna say, that would taste really good. Oh, but you know what? I'm not gonna sleep well if I do this, so I'm not gonna do it. On second thought, I'm gonna do something else. Or if it's somebody in recovery, that yearning to do something that's not healthy might be really, really strong, and you might have to really wrench yourself around to go, no, I'm going to do something else. So this is just, hopefully is a clearish example of the first thought isn't necessarily the thing you should act on. Give yourself the time to have a second thought about it. I'll just go back to my good old, close buddy friend anxiety. And, it's almost all the time completely unreliable. Almost all the time completely unreliable. There are times when it's reliable, like if I'm going to cross a busy street and I'm on foot and I don't want to get hit by a car, I'm going to be which, by the way, you have to be really careful in this town, especially if you're an older person, if you walk kind of slow. I'm going to be really careful. I'm going to watch. I'm going to put my hand up like this. If there's cars coming, I'm going to be really careful. I'm going to be a little bit anxious about crossing the street. But if I have an anxiety that comes out of nowhere for no discernible reason, like I'm not crossing a street, like I'm just sitting in bed late at night and it just comes, I can't really rely on that for anything. I don't know why it comes up, but it does. And my first thought might be to run out of the house with a baseball bat in my hand. But the second thought would be, no, everything's okay. It's 3:00 in the morning. It's quiet. The dogs are not barking. I can take a few deep breaths. And so I can corral that in. So I can't rely on that that initial reaction. It doesn't tell me any truth. It's coming from somewhere. My personal theory is that it has something to do with irregular heartbeat, and the brain gets confused and thinks that because the heart rate is speeding up, there's a flight, fight, or freeze thing getting ready to happen, and the body and the brain they're not having a good conversation. So whoever the I is, has to intervene and make them talk to each other in a sane way. So has anybody had those kind of experiences where they think they can trust something that happens, but then they end up realizing that they can't? You don't have to share. You can just nod in agreement. That's totally fine. So what happened there? So I want to say something. I've talked about these 4 questions. I've talked about questioning what happens next. And I kind of want to begin to end with the piece de resistance of questioning, which is Zazen. This is what we do in Zazen. We probe the depths of our reality. And I was thinking about this in terms of, when you're sitting in a meditation retreat, you're going to be there all day, every day for a week or something. Stuff comes up. All kinds of stuff comes up. The mind is like, oh boy, she's quiet now. She's sitting still. I'm going to just throw everything at her that I possibly can, make her remember everything that she doesn't like and everything that happened to her. It's kind of like, okay. So this is a way where we can really start to probe the depths of our reality and the depths of our experience and really start to unhook from these habits. It takes a long time. But Zazen is the perfect time to do this because in a way you're kind of stuck. You're stuck with yourself. And you have to sit here and, you could get up and run away, I suppose, but faith, to Tojin's, comment, faith pulls us back. Faith pulls us back. It's like, okay, no, I'm not going to leave the temple because Angel will get mad at me. Who knows? I'm just saying, So Zazen is really a really important tool for seeing who we are, connecting with ourselves just as we are, and learning to discern the wheat from the chaff. And I'm just going to take a little moment here to make a plug for a Zazen Kai, a day-long sit that's happening next Saturday, January 21st, if you want to spend a whole day probing the depths. There'll be one a month through May, so there'll be plenty of opportunity, but next Saturday, the 21st, is the first one. There's a few people signed up for 121. If there's 3 or if there's 20, I'll have it, so don't worry if you've signed up and there's just a few of us, I'll still do it. The registration page, I think, is updated, not just with that, but with everything else that's going on this term, and I'm sure Joichi will have something to say about that, in our formal announcements. But I just kind of want to put that plug out there. If you're interested in taking a day to explore the depths of your experience, Saturday the 21st is the time to do that. So I'm coming to, I actually did make too much material this time. I'm really kind of impressed with myself here. Usually I don't have enough to say. I'm going to close with saying a few words about compassion. So compassion to suffer with stems from a profound realization that there's a lot of pain in the world and wanting more than anything else to ease all beings of suffering. I think I've often thought about this, there are times in the present and in the past when emptiness has kind of led people down a path of nihilism. If it's all empty, then who cares? And I've kind of wrenched myself around going, because it is all empty and changing, I have to care. I have to, because I don't know when it's going to be gone. You think about, life. I work in a hospital. People die suddenly all the time. They die young. They die through their own means and through mistakes they've made in decisions, through poor health. Who knows? They die for all kinds of reasons. You just don't know. So it's very, very precious. So I think that we can have compassion just for that fact. The fact that life is fleeting and changing and always moving. I think it can't lead us anywhere else but to be compassionate. Yeah, maybe that's all I need to say. I'm going to close with the first section of The Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 lines. Maybe that'll be a good place to close. And if there's any further comments, we can take a few minutes for that. And I guess I think I got stuck on Tojin's mention of faith. Call forth as much as you can of love, of respect, and of faith. Remove the obstructing defilements and clear away your taints. Listen to the perfect wisdom of the gentle Buddhas, taught for the weal of the world, for heroic spirits intended. It almost makes me tearful. Call forth as much as you can of love, of respect, and of faith. Remove the obstructing defilements and clear away all your taints. Listen to the perfect wisdom of the gentle Buddhas, taught for the will of the world, for heroic spirits intended. So I'll just leave you with that for today. And if we have time for a couple of 3 comments, if people like, or if not, we can close.